You know what confuses most men? It's not rejection, it's inconsistency. One moment she's laughing at your jokes, replying quickly, showing genuine interest. It feels easy, natural, like something real is building between you. And then something shifts. Her messages slow down, the excitement fades, the energy changes. Suddenly, she's distant, cold, almost like you don't exist anymore. And that's the part that hits the hardest, because now you're left sitting there, staring at your phone, replaying every conversation in your head, asking yourself the same questions over and over again. What changed? Did I say something wrong? Did I lose her interest? That confusion starts to mess with you. It pulls you into overthinking, into doubt, into a place where your emotions start taking control. And without even realizing it, you begin to react. You want to fix it. You want to reach out more. You want to bring things back to how they were. But here's the truth most men never hear. This moment right here, when she starts pulling away, is where everything gets decided. Not by what she does next, but by how you respond. Because one reaction will push her even further away, and another will completely shift how she sees you. So if you've ever been in this situation, or you're in it right now, pay close attention. Because what you're about to learn will change the way you handle it forever. This situation creates a lot of confusion because everyone seems to have a different answer. Some people will tell you to chase harder, to prove your value, to fight for her attention. Others will say the opposite. Walk away, ignore her, act like you don't care. But the truth is, neither extreme really works. Because this isn't about playing games, forcing outcomes, or protecting your ego. It's about understanding what's actually happening beneath the surface and responding with clarity instead of emotion. In this video, we're going to break that down step by step. You'll understand why a woman starts to distance herself, what her silence really means, and most importantly, how to respond in a way that builds respect instead of losing it. This isn't about controlling her behavior. It's about mastering your own. Because when you learn that, everything changes.
It usually doesn't happen all at once. There's no clear warning, no obvious moment where everything just breaks. Instead, it begins with a small shift, so subtle you almost ignore it. Her replies take a little longer. The energy in her messages feels different. The excitement that used to be there starts to fade. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's tired. Maybe she's just having a stressful day. And for a while, that explanation feels enough. But then the pattern continues. The conversations get shorter. She stops asking questions. Plans become uncertain or disappear completely. And that's when it hits you. Something has changed. This is the moment where most men start overthinking everything. You go back through old messages, trying to find the exact point where things shifted. You analyze every word, every joke, every pause, looking for an answer. And in that process, your mind starts working against you. You begin to assume the worst, but here's the truth that many men struggle to accept. A woman rarely pulls away without a reason. It doesn't always mean you did something wrong, but it does mean something in the dynamic has changed. It could be emotional disconnection, it could be a drop in attraction, it could be something happening in her personal life, or sometimes she's simply stepping back to observe you. And this is where everything starts to matter. Because the moment you notice her pulling away, you feel the urge to react, to reach out more, to fix it quickly before it gets worse. But reacting too fast is where most men lose control. The sudden distance isn't just about her behavior. It's a moment that reveals your emotional balance. And if you don't handle it with awareness, that one moment can completely shift how she sees you.
Silence can feel louder than words, especially when it comes from someone who once couldn't stop talking to you. And the mistake most men make is taking that silence personally. They see it as rejection, as loss of interest, as a sign that something is over. But silence isn't always what it seems. In many cases, it's not meant to hurt you. It's meant to communicate something she doesn't say out loud. Sometimes her silence is observation. She's watching how you handle the distance. She's paying attention to whether your confidence stays steady or starts to depend on her attention. Without saying a word, she's learning about your emotional stability. Other times, her silence comes from disconnection. She may feel like something has been missing. Maybe she was putting in effort that wasn't fully noticed. Maybe the emotional connection started to fade, and instead of explaining it directly, she steps back, not to punish you, but to see if you notice. There are also moments when her silence has nothing to do with you at all. She could be dealing with stress, pressure, or internal confusion. Not every shift in energy is about attraction. Sometimes it's about her own emotional space. And yes, sometimes silence can signal a loss of interest, but even then, it's rarely as simple as she just lost feelings overnight. Attraction changes through patterns, energy, and interactions over time. The key is this: silence is information. It tells you something has changed, but it doesn't tell you to panic. Because the moment you react emotionally, by chasing, over explaining, or demanding answers, you turn uncertainty into pressure. And pressure pushes people further away. But when you approach her silence with calmness and awareness, something different happens. You give her space to feel your absence instead of your pressure. You allow her to process her own thoughts without being overwhelmed. And most importantly, you show something rare: emotional control. So instead of asking why is she being quiet, start asking a better question. What is this moment showing me? Because once you understand that silence is not the end, but a message, you stop reacting out of fear, and start responding with clarity.
When a woman starts pulling away, most men don't lose her because of the distance. They lose her because of how they react to it. And the truth is, these reactions are almost automatic. The first and most common mistake is chasing too much. You double text, you call more often, you send long messages trying to explain yourself or fix things. In your mind, it feels like effort, like you're showing you care. But from her perspective, it feels like pressure. And pressure creates distance, not attraction. The more you chase, the more it signals that your emotional state depends on her response. And the moment that happens, the balance shifts. The second mistake is trying to play games. Some men go in the opposite direction. They pretend not to care. They try to make her jealous. They post things hoping to get her attention. But this doesn't create respect. It creates confusion and often makes you look insecure rather than confident. Because real confidence doesn't need to perform. The third mistake is matching her coldness. You think, if she's distant, I'll be distant too. So you pull back, ignore her, and act indifferent. But this isn't strength, it's pride. And pride builds walls instead of connection. The fourth mistake is overthinking everything. You replay every conversation, you analyze every message, you try to decode every small detail, and slowly, your confidence starts to drop. Because instead of being present, you're stuck in your head. Here's what all these mistakes have in common. They come from fear. Fear of losing her, fear of not being enough, fear of the unknown. And when fear drives your actions, you lose control. That's why these reactions push her further away. Not because you care, but because you're trying to control something that can't be forced. If there's one thing to understand, it's this: desperation repels, calmness attracts. And the moment you shift from reacting emotionally to responding with awareness, everything starts to change.
When a woman starts to distance herself, your first instinct will be to react, to reach out, to fix it, to close the gap as quickly as possible. But the strongest move you can make in that moment is to pause. Not ignore, not disappear, just pause. Because when you slow down your reaction, you regain control over your emotions, and that changes everything. The first step is simple: create space for clarity. Instead of acting on impulse, take a step back and observe. Ask yourself what actually changed. Not from a place of panic, but from a place of awareness. Did the energy shift? Did the communication change? Or is she dealing with something unrelated to you? This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding the situation without emotion clouding your judgment. The second step is controlled communication. You don't need long explanations or emotional messages. In fact, those usually make things worse. One calm, confident message is enough. Something simple like, "I've noticed a bit of distance. If you need space, I understand. I'm here when you're ready to talk." That's it. No pressure, no chasing, no over-explaining, just clarity and respect. And then comes the hardest part for most men. You give her that space, you don't follow up repeatedly. You don't check in every day. You don't try to force a response, because the moment you say you respect her space, your actions need to match your words. This is where your composure is tested. Because real strength isn't in what you say, it's in what you don't do. When you respond this way, you show emotional maturity, self-respect, and confidence. And those are the qualities that shift how she sees you. There comes a point where you have to stop focusing on her and start focusing on yourself. Because the more you chase her attention, the more you lose your own center. And that's where most men go wrong. They make her the priority. Her responses, her mood, her presence, everything starts to control how they feel. But the moment you shift that focus, everything changes. Instead of asking, how do I get her back? Start asking, why am I depending on her attention in the first place? That question alone creates awareness, because attraction isn't built on neediness. It's built on strength, purpose, and independence. So redirect your energy, put it into your physical health, go to the gym, build your discipline, focus on your goals, your work, your ambitions. Reconnect with the things that made you feel confident before her attention became so important. This isn't about distracting yourself. It's about rebuilding yourself. Because when you stop chasing, you naturally become more grounded. You think clearer. You act with intention. You stop reacting out of emotion. And here's the irony. The less you chase her, the more space she has to feel your absence. The more you grow, the more noticeable your presence becomes. So don't use this moment to chase what's pulling away. Use it to become someone who doesn't need to.
At some point, you need to understand something powerful. You are not meant to disappear just because someone pulls back. You are meant to reclaim your presence, your energy, your identity, your direction. Because most men make one critical mistake here. They start measuring their worth based on how much attention they are getting in return. And when that attention fades, they feel like they are losing value. But your value was never meant to be dependent on someone else's response. Reclaiming your presence means returning to yourself. It means remembering who you were before the overthinking started, before the waiting, before the uncertainty. You are not someone who begs for attention. You are someone who brings value, consistency, and purpose into your own life first. And here is the shift that changes everything. When you stop trying to be noticed, you naturally become noticeable, not because you are forcing it, but because your energy is no longer chasing approval. It is grounded, calm, unshaken, and that kind of presence is rare. So instead of trying to pull her back into your world, build a world so strong that your presence speaks for itself.
Emotional control is what separates reaction from strength. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop letting your feelings control your decisions. When a woman pulls away, most men immediately react. They panic, overthink, and try to fix things instantly. But emotional control creates a gap between what you feel and what you do. And in that gap, it is your power. Because calmness is not weakness, it is stability. When you remain composed under emotional pressure, you communicate something far more powerful than words. You show that your peace is not dependent on anyone else. And that changes how you are seen. Not as someone who needs validation, but as someone who has control over himself. Attraction may start with emotion, but respect is built through control. And the man who can control his emotions will always control the direction of his life. When you stop reacting the way she expects, something interesting happens. The entire dynamic shifts. She expected emotion. You gave calmness. She expected chasing. You gave space. She expected pressure. You gave silence. And that breaks the pattern, because most people are used to predictable reactions. When that pattern is broken, it creates curiosity. And curiosity leads to reflection. She starts thinking about you differently, not because you are doing more, but because you are doing less with control. She replays conversations in her mind. She notices your absence more than your presence. She starts questioning whether she misread your value. But this doesn't happen because you're trying to manipulate anything. It happens because you changed your energy. You stopped acting from fear. You started acting from self-control. And when that shift becomes consistent, it naturally makes her rethink her perception of you. Not because you chased her, but because you didn't. And that is what makes the difference, because nothing is more powerful than a man who remains stable when everything around him changes.